Hello, I'm Sarah Clark and I'm an advisory teacher with the Communication and Interaction team.
I'm Lucy Bomford. I'm a speech and language therapist and also an advisor with the CNI team.
So welcome to this short webinar outlining the tools available to secondary schools to support identification of possible speech, language and communication needs. As part of your graduated response, you are required to identify language needs in your students, and this webinar aims to support you to do just that by taking a look at some of the tools that we find useful in exploring young people's language strengths and needs. So the best place to start when considering possible language differences is by referencing the freely available universally speaking documents. So links to all of the resources mentioned today will be made available to you. These documents describe what typical language development looks like across the key areas. And when you understand what typical development looks like, you're in a better place to identify any differences. So the blue booklet that you can see highlighted looks at development for the 11 to 18 age group, but you may also find it helpful to have a copy of the orange primary age booklet. You can download electronic copies of these documents or hard copies. You can order freely from Speech and Language UK. So when you're thinking about potential speech, language and communication differences, it's really important to consider the different skills involved. Does the student that you're thinking about have strengths or needs within social interaction, attention and concentration, understanding or using words and sentences, or perhaps difficulties with reading or wider literacy skills? The different checklists that you can see on the screen now, including the Devon Graduated Response Assess tool, will help you consider all of these different areas and create an initial profile of strengths and needs. And this is really important when you're considering appropriate provision moving forward. The checklists are always best used in conjunction with the universally speaking documents that we just showed you to remind you that what typical development looks like for the age of the young person or the young people that you're thinking about. So we all know that behaviour is communication and it's often of an unmet need, and many young people who have experienced developmental trauma, adverse child experiences, or on your SEMH radar, or perhaps your pastoral team's radar, have unidentified or are very likely to have unidentified language difficulties. And the tool that you can see on the screen now was developed by both the social emotional mental health and communication and interaction teams to help you to support and consider the social and emotional development of your young people alongside their language and communication development. So to start with, you're asked to give a brief outline of the young person's experiences to this point. And then the tool moves on to highlight what different typical development looks like across both areas, really. And you can start at the most appropriate age, the chronological age of the young person that you're thinking about, and consider both their social and emotional development and their language and communication development, and really highlight or rag rate where the young person is secure. And if you're finding at the chronological age that there's lots of areas of red, then you'll perhaps want to go back to an earlier stage to consider development in that area first. So don't feel that you've just got to stick with the page of the chronological age of the young person.
The company SpeechLink have relatively recently launched a secondary version of their language link tool, and if this is not something you already have available in school, they do offer a free trial which is well worth taking up. So this is looking like the primary versions at understanding of language, and it looks at certain specific areas of language. So it's a really useful tool to have, and it does also have an intervention part to the package. Really important to look closely at the results that you get, because the system takes an average across all of the areas of language assessed. So a young person may come out green, but there could be one or two areas that they found really, really difficult. And it's really important not to ignore those, even though the overall result is green, because those might be the key to what they're finding difficult and what's getting in the way of their access to learning. So really useful tool to consider having available. The test of abstract language comprehension is a way that you can assess young people's understanding at the blank levels of language, which goes from the concrete through to the abstract. And whilst in terms of typical development, secondary age pupils should have full understanding at all 4 levels, we not infrequently find young people who haven't and are having particular difficulties at the more abstract end of the scale at levels 3 and 4, which can have a huge impact on their understanding and access to the curriculum, but also on their interaction with others. So it's a really useful tool. It takes about 20 minutes to administer via a series of pictures, some of which you can see on the right there. And you ask questions at all 4 levels, and this allows you to ascertain the level of confidence and competence across those 4 areas. Language for Behaviour and Emotions is a book that Sarah and I use a huge amount with a variety of our schools, and it's a really useful tool for unpicking whether young people have got the language skills required for, exactly as it says, managing their own behaviour, understanding and regulating their own emotions, and using language to get on with other people. It's an intervention as well as an assessment, but the assessment part, the authors recommend that you start with these 3 activities that you can see on the screen. So there's an assessment scenario that you read something to the young person, then you ask them questions about it. There's a document for them to complete that you can see there, the young person's view of their own communication. So they're asked to RAG rate different situations from easy to really tricky. And there's a similar document that an adult would complete of the person that knows that young person best to RAG rate their skills. And based on that, it might direct you to some further assessment, or it may then be able to highlight some of the areas you could use within the toolkit or within the scenarios that are used for intervention. So it's a really useful tool and is suitable for pupils from late primary school right up through secondary. And then there are the Communications Trust's speech, language and communication progression tools, and these come as a pack for 11 right through to 18. This is not an intervention, it's just an assessment tool, and it allows you to look in a bit more depth at some of the areas of language that you can see there: understanding of spoken language and verbal reasoning, understanding and using vocab, sentence structure and narrative, and also social communication. So there are 2 parts to the assessment. There's a bit that you do with the young person, so that allows you to see how do they do in a kind of best case scenario, one-to-one, in a quiet space with plenty of time to reflect on their answers. And then there's an observation part that, again, a member of staff would do to see what their functional communication is across these same 4 areas of language in the classroom, and you can put those together and, as you see on the screen, create a profile of that young person. You can then repeat these assessments after some intervention, so it can be part of your outcome measurement as well.
Okay, so this webinar is designed to support you during the first stage of your assess, plan, do, review cycle, and we invite you to join us for the next webinar for stage 2, which is provision planning, post-assessment provision planning.